It's interesting. One of the most repeated commands in all of Scripture is to welcome the stranger. And the best translation for that word in Hebrew in our modern language is immigrant. It says, welcome the stranger because you were strangers once. Welcome the immigrant because you were immigrants once.
Johnn salió de su país rumbo a Estados Unidos en febrero pasado, ilusionado con trabajar y sacar adelante a sus hijos de 7 y 9 años, y que al llegar a la frontera se entregó a las autoridades. Fue recluido en este centro de detención de ICE en Nuevo México. Johnn Benavidez murió el pasado 15 de junio en un centro de procesamiento en el condado de Otero, en Nuevo México, y que está a la espera de los resultados de la autopsia para determinar la causa de su muerte.
So there are 3 county detention centers in New Mexico that are currently have a contract with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So there are the one in Torrance County, the one in Cibola County, and the one in Otero County. All 3 of those contracts are local government contracts.
And when we were hearing the stories of the folks who had been detained at Torrance County, at Cibola, at Otero, we heard terrifying stories of really bad treatment, really unchristian treatment toward folks who are escaping really difficult situations in their home country.
A lot of people don't understand that. They think that the government is in charge of these immigrant detention centers, but in fact they're run by these huge private corporations.
So there's something called PREA, most people will hear it referred to as PREA. What it stands for is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. And Torrance County failed their audit based on several PREA violations that happened. I've been able to go to the Torrance County Detention Center, and I've witnessed men with serious injuries talking about alleged abuse that they faced from guards in detention.
I was there when they had the audit. Because before we had the audit, I remember that they came in with mops, brooms, cleaning supplies, and they told us that we had to have everything clean. We had to have our beds neat. We had to clean the toilets. We were cleaning doors. We were cleaning the floors. We were cleaning stairs. And a lot of people do the cleaning because they don't really know what's going on. And that out of boredom, but what they don't know is that these people were getting the jail prepared to have the audit. So whenever the audit people came in, everything looked pretty nice and neat. I remember that day we had chicken. There was a man that was there for 4 months, and he's like, never by 4 months have we ever had chicken. So I remember he was the warden, and then someone else with him, and like 3 people from the audit. And I remember there was a woman that looked right up at my cell door, because I was banging on that door. I was yelling, getting their attention. And I told him, I was like, hey, this is my name. I speak fluent English. I really want to talk to you guys to let you know what's actually going on in this place, not all these lies that these people are telling you. I think it was the warden that looked right at my cell door, and then he told the guard to open the door of the pod, and then he rushed them out. I remember that I had my credible fear, and the first week that I was there, I suppose, and they didn't tell me anything, nothing. They don't tell you anything. They have all these these cubby holes at the entrance. They're supposed to be full of information if you're able to report something, sick call, information about the jail, information you want to do about your case, people you can pro bono, people you can call. They don't have none of that. But the day they had the audit, they filled them up. And when the audit was over, a guard came and picked them back up. So it's things like that.
CoreCivic has repeatedly denied allegations of mistreatment at both the Cibola and Torrance County facilities, but New Mexico's congressional leaders are not buying it. Senator Martin Heinrich addressed the issues during a congressional hearing earlier this year where Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas committed to looking into the Torrance County facility. Heinrich doubled down last week with this letter saying, "I am growing exceedingly frustrated that my concerns have not been addressed." He goes on to explain new reports of overflowing sewage and retaliation against migrants at the Torrance County facility. CoreCivic denied reports of a sewage spill and many other issues detailed in Heinrich's letter.
We heard a lot of confusion about what the process was, a lot of confusion about why they were being detained. and a lot of frustration. Many times we heard about people who'd been separated from their families. A lot of folks that were really just anxious about where their partner was, where their kids were, how they could get back and get reunited with them. They'd all crossed the border together, and then just one person had been detained and separated out, and that was really scary.
Because immigrant detention really is motivated by profit, by these private corporations. Over 80% of immigrants are detained in these detention centers that are run by private corporations.
Those that are in civil detention are essentially immigrants that are majority are seeking asylum or humanitarian-based claim because they fear for their safety, because they were persecuted against in their home country. These are people seeking a safe haven, essentially. And this is a legal claim that they can do. They have not committed a crime. They are simply seeking asylum in most cases.
What the federal government has done is has looked at immigration as a national security crisis rather than a humanitarian issue.
People that have not were able to receive diabetic medication, people that weren't able to get medication to prevent their seizures, people that are telling me that they're eating rotten food, that they're being housed in solitary confinement, to name just a few. There's so many examples. And then on top of that, hearing from other attorneys and advocates that are there more frequently that these conditions continue and persist. We have the Office of Inspector General and the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties telling us that these are some of the worst conditions that they've seen, and that they are calling for the closure of the Torrance County Detention Center because that's how severe it is. On top of that, our entire federal delegation is calling for the closure of that as well.
What is happening with detention of asylum seekers in this country, in this state, is a sin done on our behalf. And so it is on us to raise our voices to say, as a society, we need to stop. We need to treat our neighbor with dignity. We need to welcome immigrants as our spiritual tradition asks us to.
The case of Roxana Hernández, she was an asylum seeker. She came to New Mexico. She was detained in the Cibola County Detention Center, and she faced severe medical neglect. She was held in solitary confinement, and then eventually they found her unconscious, and ultimately, unfortunately, she died. Cibola gets 50 cents a day per detainee. She was there for 14 days. That means that they made a total of $7 to be complicit in her death.
This is really a money-making situation. I think for some people, right, they believe that people are detained on the basis of what they have done, right? But immigrant detention is actually people are detained on the basis of how much, right, money that individual is going to bring in.
The other thing that we've heard repeatedly from folks that have worked in these facilities is how dehumanizing it is to work in a facility that is consistently dehumanizing the immigrant community. That locking people up in this way, locking people up without solid legal justification, feeding these subpar meals, having to do the crowd control when often they're short-staffed. The folks know that this is not the way that they would want their family members treated. They know that there isn't justice in the way that we're treating our immigrant neighbors. And so it's difficult for them to stay in these roles. And I just don't think that this is the right way for us to try to lift up employment in our rural communities. We owe our rural communities better than an illegal and immoral detention scheme for employment.
The point of this bill is a very specific and narrow bill that is simply to prevent the state and local governments from contracting with ICE for the purposes of civil immigration detention.
This campaign is trying to make visible something that is intentionally being kept as invisible as possible. we don't want our community writ large to understand how asylum seekers are being treated.
So I think it's really important to educate our communities, our family members, because I think a lot of injustice happens when people don't know what's going on.
They cause a lot of damage to people physically and mentally. I mean, how many more people do we need to have dying in these places? There's nothing beneficial about these places besides the people that are getting this money.
It's not even about any political divide. This is about who we are in the essence of humanity, and that we are above this. And that's why we have to do something and act. Act now.